Hey guys, I want to do a quick video here. I always say it's going to be a quick video, and you probably already know that it's not going to be a quick video, but I want to talk to you today about advancements in the knife industry, in knife steels, and in metallurgy. Yesterday I did a video on ProCut. That video was not perfect, and that video was fully conjecture, as I have not tested ProCut yet in my own hands. However, I'm looking at ProCut as a knife reviewer, as a knife enthusiast, and as the owner of a knife company. So it is something that I am considering for my own product line going forward. And when I am considering something for my own product line, I have to take that very, very seriously, because it's how I make money, okay? So what I want to talk about is whether or not the knife industry is even moving forward. And so I think sometimes it can be difficult to track progress in anything over a short duration of time. And so my knife journey started probably about 1996. I bought my first knife. It was a cold steel True Flight thrower. Bought that down in, I think it was the Sportsman's Warehouse. And it came with no sheath. I think it cost me like $15. It was 1055 high carbon steel. And I took it to Blade Tech, who at this time, as I understand it, was pioneering the use of Kydex. And I'm telling you right now, some of the Kydex sheaths that they made in the early days, the Kydex was like that thick. I mean, it was crazy, way thicker than anything that we have now, but it was really cool. Before that, I had owned an SOG Tomcat or Tiger Shark, something like that. It was a lockback folder. I think it was a good knife. Lockback wasn't easy to use, but I'm a little kid at this point. And the reason I talk about that, I think to understand how far we've come or where we're going, I think it helps to look at where we've been and look at the history. Now, 1996, that's not a lot of history. A lot of you guys watching are going to be like, you know, I was already done with my knife and adventure life in 1996. However, I think it's far enough back that we can track a change in the industry, because I think these changes in the industry are relatively recent. So the reason I bring that up is back at this time, you know, I'd go to the Puyallup Fair, and it was a knife and gun show. I'm sorry. I would go to the Puyallup Fair grounds, and the Puyallup Fair, of course, the Puyallup Fair grounds, and they'd have these huge gun shows, but also knife shows, lots of custom makers. And I remember, you know, like my dad being very impressed with like Spyderco and Benchmade, because they would come sharp. So as a kid getting into knives, it was not uncommon for me to purchase a knife that wasn't necessarily sharp. It was not uncommon for me to purchase a knife and for it to be incredibly brittle. And for the history of knives, and with stainless steels and advancements in technology and stuff like that, I think that was a very common thing. Again, this video, like my Pop's ProCut video, is conjecture based on my first-hand experience. And it wasn't until maybe about 8 years ago, probably in the golden age of the knife industry, in my opinion, I think I got into an argument probably with somebody on Meeting of the Prepared Minds Facebook group. And I was of the opinion at that time that stainless steels were brittle crap. And someone asked, well, what would you say if I did all of these things with a 1/8 inch thick machete that was stainless? I said, I'd probably call you a liar. Well, that was John May, and he sent the machete to me, and I'm very thankful for him at this point in time. 12C27, made by Fox Knives in Italy. And I took it down with my buddy, the Shoe Bottoms down there in Tennessee. We beat the piss out of this knife. I was batoning through logs. I was chopping. I was chopping down trees. And the machete was taking it no problem. I still to this day love 1227, by the way, and some of the people, I won't get into 12C27 I guess right now. Anyways, later I believe I had a Tops MSK, and I was helping a buddy skin out a frozen deer with my 1095 Tops MSK, and he had a cheap Schrade in stainless steel, and it held an edge way longer than my little Tops knife, as in uncomparable, okay? And so, you know, I was learning about knives through first-hand use. That's a really long type of investment to get a good taste for knives and steels, and it's a flawed way to get a good taste for knives and steels, because a lot of times you're going to get a knife in a steel, and if it's not done right, that could leave a bad taste in your mouth for that steel across the board, when the steel wasn't the problem was the manufacturer or maker. But going back, all right, if you are a bushcraft guy, you've heard people like, just use an axe, stop using a knife is not for that. Well, if you look at some of Laren's data on forge heat treating and stuff like that, if you overheat steel just a little bit with a lot of these high carbon steels, you can ruin the heat treat. You can ruin it very, very easily. So if you're sitting here and you're heat treating and you're going to magnetic, or you're just going by color, it is too easy to screw that up. And back then, kilns were not as accessible as they are today. Really, when it comes to knife making, nothing was. And most importantly, information was not as accessible as it is today. And you would look at knife performance charts, and you can still find some of these today on the internet, and I look at them and I'm like, what kind of crack cocaine went into the making of this chart? It was pure marketing, pure hogwash. Good information was hard to come by, and generally speaking, good information could be obtained by people who could afford to pay for it, okay? You would pay a metallurgist, and that began to change, I believe, with blade forums, which I hate. But, you know, again, learning about knives, you'd get on blade forums, and you had knife makers sharing heat treats, sharing everything else. To get back to the axe, there's no replacement for displacement, okay? So if your heat treat's not going to be perfect, you want mass. And an axe has mass in a way that a knife does not. And so if you're going to be having impact and stuff like that, you grab an axe. It's got thick edge geometry, because your knives would not hold up. Batoning was destroying knives, chopping could destroy knives, and it was because of heat treat. I'm going to have an axe versus knife video up here pretty soon, and I don't want you to misunderstand this, because I love axes. I am an axe junkie. However, the just use an axe crowd can be very ignorant when it comes to knives. All of this to say, I experienced an industry where knives sucked. All right, most knives sucked. Manufacturers were doing an awesome job if the knife didn't break and it came sharp, and a lot of custom makers were making thick edges, and I experienced firsthand that some of these things were no longer relevant while doing my YouTube, okay, through the stainless use, the stainless abuse, etc. And so I believe what we also saw was Essie start to revolutionize the industry. So I remember Bussy, I remember looking at Bussy before I deployed in 2009, and I couldn't afford it at the time, and Infi steel was the thing, the super steel. And when the Hunglis, the Essie Hunglis came out, the 1095 wasn't breaking, and I remember reviews comparing it to these big old Bussy beasts, these monstrous knives, And the SE was outperforming them because it had thinner edge geometry. I say that in 2025, and that sounds crazy, but it happened. I was there for it. So we saw progression with metallurgy, with heat treat. Like these buses, their edges were thick, but as people started using knives for the things that used to not be knife tasks, the edges thickened up, and now we've seen them thin back down. And Dr. Laren Thomas, I want to leave this as brief as possible with Knife Steel Nerds. He is a metallurgist who is sharing metallurgy information and data for free. I hear people argue about the charts all the time. I hear people say, I don't care what Laren says all the time. That's fine. But the makers, the hobbyist makers who are making knives right now are probably basing their heat treats off of Laren Thomas's data. And so this proliferation of information, okay, has changed the industry simultaneously with Survivor Man and Man vs. Wild or Alone or Naked and Afraid. We had this huge surge in the knife industry with survival stuff. We saw knives being used more often, being used harder. We saw a lot more makers. And as the knife industry grew, as the market grew, as the money was there, we started seeing knife-specific steels. Now, I'm not up to speed on knife history. You know, I feel like I remember S30V being touted as this new amazing steel because I feel like I remember hearing that Chris Reeves had designed it, and it was the first knife-specific steel that was designed. That could be wrong. Again, this is conjecture, and I'm standing here talking off of the top of my head, so I could certainly mess stuff up. But knife-specific steel is a relatively modern thing, guys. Generally speaking, we have this huge range of steels, especially with high carbon steels. You're like, oh, well, why do we have this steel when this steel is so close? Or with stainlesses. Well, it's because all of these steels are being brought in from other industries, and we're using them to make knives, okay? And we're getting it all figured out. But with time, the money was there, making it worth it to invest in having knife-specific steels. Now, I can go buy a White River knife and tool Ursus Cub in MagnaCut at, I think, 6061 HRC with a behind-the-edge thickness of like somewhere between 15 to 20 thou, again off the top of my head. I think they're considerably thinner than 20 thou though. And have a knife that performs with a balance of corrosion resistance, edge holding, and durability, toughness, strength, that was not available at all 15 years ago. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, good heat treats came from two kinds of people: scientists and magicians. And if you went to the best of either of those in these times past, you would not get a knife of the same dimensions with the same capabilities at any price. 440C was the high-speed stuff back then. 52-100, any steel. You would not match the performance of this Ursus Cub. I think they sell for about $200. And you can just go on the internet and just buy it. People talk about the prices of knives creeping up. People have been complaining recently about the price of TRC knives because I've been talking about them. And I don't think they realize, especially when you factor in inflation and everything else, how affordable we have it right now. I promise you, you will look back to right now as the golden era for quality versus value. And so we had these new steels come out: S30, S35 VN, S45 VN, LMAX. A lot of these steels got somewhat tainted upon release because something went wrong at first. For instance, off the top of my head, I seem to recall zero tolerance knives jumping on the LMAX bandwagon almost immediately and ruining the heat treat. And everybody's like, oh, I don't want LMAX. This crap is chipping out, breaking. This is garbage. All right, this was fixed somewhat soon, but first impressions last a long time. To contrast that, look at what TRC is doing with LMAX. Look what I've done to the Apocalypse, the TRC Apocalypse. And you know, I've had discussions with people like Mike Stewart on the historical use of knives and how knives are intended to be used by people who actually use them. Those people didn't have the knives that we have today. That's a big part of the difference. And I'll do a video on that at some point probably. I'll probably get spun up for one reason or another and talk about the difference between what Kephart had and what we have, and why that's changed how we use knives, and how that's completely okay. But my TRC Apocalypse, I think we're at a 1/4 inch thick at the spine, and the attention to detail is amazing. And behind the edge, I believe we're below 20 thou, maybe at 15 thou. And you couldn't do that with high carbon steels or the toughest steels going way back, I don't think. You know, you had such stuff like the Cold Steel Trailmaster and Carbon V, which could have been a variety of steels, but you had you had more thickness behind the edge. No replacement for a displacement, right? What TRC has done with LMAX is amazing. And even D2, I was on the D2 hate bandwagon, but my Wander Tactical Smilodon in D2, I have beat the piss out of that knife with no damage. So what I want, the point of this video, I've talked for 17 minutes now, and most people have probably already clicked away. The point is that advancements are incremental. I think the largest advancements that we've seen in recent years would be MagnaCut. And I think the reason is that we've had a market that will support research for so long now at this point, and will support knife-specific steels, which is still hard. We're still a tiny piece of the industry. Crucible still went out of business, okay? So as I'm talking about all this, we're still a drop in the bucket. But with the freedom of information, like in Laren Thomas, guys, I think could have kept all of his data to himself. I have talked to Laren a bit. I would bet that a part of the reason why he's published information, and again, I don't know him and I don't know his heart, right, would be that he would see such stupid information posted online, and he would have good information, and he thought, maybe if I post some real data with real scientific measurements behind it, and not just some yo-yuck retard on YouTube like me, it could do something, and maybe I wouldn't have to listen to some of the stupidity as much anymore. I don't know. Maybe he had other reasons, but you know, it was last year he got most influential person of the year from Blade Show. Don't know if he got it again this year. I don't know who would be more influential. I'm not saying he's above reproach. I'm not saying you might not have issues with him. But I do think if you objectively, because right now the question is, most people that are buying knives, look, the people who are screaming about hardness and Laren's testing and knife performance the loudest are dorks who live in the city and who cut packing tape. That is who the loudest demographic is of knife performance enthusiasts today, is the people who use their knives the least. The people who brag about their sharpening skills and just do a ton of sharpening stuff, and who are way better than me at sharpening, want all of the edge holding the most. And everything becomes this consumerist thing where people are looking at data sheets and numbers to influence their buys and what they want the most, without the experience of getting out and using these knives. So there is this, like, is this new steel, this is all from ProCut, of course. Is this new steel a new thing, or is this just consumerism? Is this just the next thing to get people to buy knives, and next year we'll have a new steel and ProCut will be the dumb thing, and we'll get a new steel, and then MagnaCut will be the dumb thing, and now we have Magna Max. Who wants MagnaCut? I think what we're seeing is a market that for the time being can support very dedicated and very specific advancements. I think advancements are being made. I do think that MagnaCut is as cool as we think it is. I don't know that we'll see Ursus Cubs at the kind of price that they were at that I mentioned. If you're watching this in 5 years, you might be like, dude, an Ursus Cub is $400 now, or $500 now. Our currency value is being demolished at record levels. Meanwhile, we also have tariffs, and these steels are being imported, not in a finished form, as I understand it, but imported in ingots and then being rolled out here. So we have tariffs to deal with. Raw material costs are going up. If we go to war, then fun hobby knife boy supplies will probably dry up as manufacturers focus on more wartime industries. But objectively speaking, when you look at where we have been, I think where we are is amazing. I absolutely will not, speaking of ProCut specifically, if ProCut doesn't end up living up to its marketing, I will tell you that. I will not invest in it myself. And that's just going to be the way that it is. So I'm not saying every steel that'll ever be released from here won't just be consumerism. I mean, we do have an industry that is currently driven by consumerism. But here's what I want to end with. It's okay to be the guy who is still using a Mora or is still using an SE, who goes out on adventures, actually uses their gear, and is proud of what they are able to accomplish with a simple knife that is cheap. My BPS Bushmate in 1066 high carbon steel is still sharp, and I've been beating the crap out of it out here. And I'm not going to tell you that Laren, as he's mentioned himself, that Laren's Catra edge holding testing is directly related to what I'm doing here in the woods. And I'm not going to tell you need to buy an expensive knife. There's something to be said for doing a lot with a little. But so for the bushcraft guys who are so mad about the consumerism, and understandably so, I think in a lot of ways, I want you to realize that the reason that we have so many knives to buy, we have so many advancements, and that the prices are so affordable, because they are today, is because of consumerism. It's because of these guys that are just buying. Without consumerism, could the world be a better place with less custom makers and every single knife in the world being made out of AEBO? I don't know, maybe. you know, in certain ways, but we like variety. Variety is the spice of life, and that's a consumerist thing to say. But we probably wouldn't end up with a huge selection of really great knives, perfectly heat treated in AEBL, would we? We'd end up with a bunch of questionably manufactured and designed knives that were designed by some committee designed knives in some low carbon steel, because nobody would care enough about the market to actually invest in it. So just some things to think about, guys. This is just a I don't know, a talking video. If you've watched to this point, you have problems, and we could probably be buddies, because I have the same problems. I like talking about knives. I love the knife industry. I love the custom knife industry, and I love the American custom knife industry, truly. And you know, I hope that in an industry where we are literally like under attack from subsidized manufacturing from overseas and stuff like that, that we can get along, move forward, remain competitive, and keep this thing that we love going. That's it. I was supposed to be breaking a chassis, Chinese clone bussy right now, but I decided this video was more important, even though only like 7 weirdos will end up watching it. But for you 7 weirdos, I appreciate you. Rock and roll. Talk to you in the comment section below. Of course, in the description box below, you can see how you can support this channel. Best way to do that is through Exodus Knife and Tool. If you're watching this when I upload it, I've got knives in stock. Check it out. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed day.